Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode with AA Media. Today I have one of my favorite professors here. I'm taking corporate strategy, and I have the honor to have Professor Slatton here. Professors, thanks for coming.
You're very welcome. I bet you say that to all your professors. In fact, I know you do because I've listened to your podcast.
Well, I can't really distinguish from all the good professors, so it's also a good way to start the conversation.
Sure.
From being a CEO of multiple companies, a business professor, as well as a wide variety with experience in different industries, what led you to teach corporate strategy, Professor?
Well, I didn't start out teaching corporate strategy. I started out when I was still a pastor, commuting here once a week and teaching what was like the required course for the minors that preceded the business minor. We had two minors, a corporate strategy minor and a financial economics minor. And in order to do either one, you had to take this class called Fundamentals of Management. So they put, I've always been sort of a generalist, so they put me teaching that, very large classes, 70 or 80 folks. And that was kind of a great way to get introduced to teaching here. And then later on, after I moved here and started teaching full-time back in 2017, I began doing corporate strategy and what was at the time called advanced corporate strategy, but there wasn't an earlier one. And as well as the most badly named class ever, business management, which, says just about nothing, but it's actually a great course. So, yeah. And I come to strategy actually coming out of a background of strategy consulting. In the days when I was at business school, strategy was kind of the hot subject area. We had Michael Porter there teaching, and he was in the midst of developing all of his work on corporate strategy, business unit strategy, as well as more corporate. And then it was also the days when BCG, the Boston Consulting Group, and Bain were really developing the practice of strategy. And so I left business school, went to Bain Company, and was in the practice of strategy consulting for 5 years. So it's kind of a natural thing for me.
How was that transition from business school into the workplace? I know a lot of my friends are considering business school as well. Would it be something you recommend, Professor?
Business school, absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's lots of reasons for that. I think one of the best reasons, people know a lot of them. It really enhances your earning power. It teaches you an awful lot. You build a network of friends and folks that you'll probably, know and love the rest of your life. But one of the things I think that's so great about business school is that it introduces you to the broadness, the breadth of business. For instance, we did over the course of a 2-year program, we probably did about 500 case studies. And yeah, it's a lot.
Compared to hours in class.
Yeah, we do 12, 15, so not many. But doing that, each one of those is a picture of someone doing a particular job in a particular company, in a particular industry, and you get to learn what all those things look like. What does it mean to be a venture capitalist? What does it mean to be a product manager at a consumer packaged goods firm? What does it mean to be a chief operating officer, a chief executive officer? And that kind of broad perspective is really wonderful because most people, when they graduate college, don't really have a great idea of where they want to end up.
That's true.
So getting that tremendously broad perspective allows you to see kind of what's a good fit for you, and there are surprises. I went into my production and operations management class thinking, oh my gosh, why do we have to take this? And it turned out to be one of my 2 favorite classes ever. And and then I wound up doing a lot of work in the manufacturing sector when I went into consulting. So that was a big surprise for me, and I think most people get surprised like that. Most people, I mean, I don't know if there was anyone in my business school section of about 80 people that went into the same industry, went back into the same industry that they came out of. Everybody sort of changed paths based on their new understanding of what was out there and wanting to try something different and something that might be a better fit for them. So,
I remember that from doing a few cold calls with people who are recruiting for consulting, and one thing that they really stressed was that consulting doesn't necessarily close any doors, but rather opens them because of the exposure that you mentioned. So it does check out, but I think from my perspective as somebody who's in the tech industry, doing software development, I think building that experience out of college of an SD1 too, it's something that you have to consider if you want to get up in your career. So I guess it depends on what career you choose.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's be honest, the breadth of things that you see in business school is going to be far broader than what you see in consulting. I mean, we used to have 2 clients at a time. Now everybody does 1 client at a time. So you're going to see a client for 6 months, a year, a couple of years, and then move on to another one. I mean, in consulting, you're going to get exposure to a handful of different industries and companies and so forth. So it's not the broad exposure that a lot of people think consulting is. It's not. I mean, it's the luck of the draw. It's what clients do you get assigned to?
Yeah.
I think it's a fallacy that people think that they're going to get a really broad exposure when they go into consulting. If they happen to go into the private equity consulting area, that's more likely because then your time with the client is going to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks doing due diligence or putting together a plan to turn around one of their acquisitions, and then you move on to another one, and then you move on to another one, and then you move on. So every few weeks you're doing something new, a completely different industry, and it's that's the place where you get broad exposure in consulting, I think.
I see. Back to the class that we have together this semester.
Yeah.
One really important lesson that I got from your lecture was when you said that out of graduation, everything that you do have is an abundance amount of data, and at the same time, only thing that you need is also data. So having this over information, but also missing the most important specific information that you're looking for is something that a lot of people face as a challenge. And I kind of got a taste of it through my internship where I was working with a lot of ambiguous, not necessarily central to what I was looking for information, and kind of being concise and picking it was really something that I had to master. So in that same tangent of similar challenges, what could you say there would be in the future, problems or challenges that you need to overcome that you kind of need to start preparing from now through the classes or through the curriculum?
Sure. I mean, there are several sort of more general principles that I think are good to pick up in business classes. One of those is, as you say, every business problem is a very complex problem because there's not just a simple, well, let's figure out the price here, and that's it. Because every time you do that, you've got to think about competitive strategy. You've got to think about marketing. You've got to think about, brand equity and margins and the financials and all of that. So every business decision is a highly complex decision. And in the face of that, you have, as you were saying, too much information and not enough information.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to have all the information that you need to make the perfect decision. And you're always going to have way more than you need because most of it's not relevant. But it, kind of fogs up the decision process. And so one of the things that you really need to be doing as a student is learning First of all, that it's complicated, and secondly, what data should I be paying attention to, and what should I be ignoring and just setting to the side? Because it's way too easy to just go in and wallow in the case or the data, and pay attention to all the wrong things. So that's something that I hope you and other students in corporate strategy are learning, is how to sort out what's meaningful from what's not. And I think that's a big deal. And something that will serve you really well as you go on to business school and as you go on in the business world. So, and that's, as you say, really critical, especially critical for young people coming out of college, because you don't have experience.
No.
You don't have anything to draw on that people are going to listen to. They're going to value their opinions way more than they value
like,
yours.
what does this guy know who just graduated and came out of college now?
Exactly. And as we well know, the big consulting firms can charge $1 million a month for a team that's mostly people
from
recently out of college, because they're bringing not experience, not opinion to the table, but doing their homework and getting the right data, applying the right analytic tools, and getting to recommendations that way. So it's a powerful thing, this idea of using analysis on the right data and coming up with solutions based on that. That persuades people who've been in the business for 30 years, and your opinions don't.
I think another instance where I noticed that is the cases that we do in our class. Like when I open the PDF and I see 12 pages of just different words and like this charts, I'm like, this is so much information. But then at the end, there's like only 3 questions that I have to answer. So kind of being comprehensive with all that information, but also concise into answering those questions. Because I know you want like very short, simple answers.
I do.
It's a difficult thing to do. So when you devise these cases, or when you try to kind of formulate the class where we read the case before, but then we have to answer and kind of discuss it, what's your main goal? What's your intention into making us like think a certain way?
It is really all about what I just mentioned before. It's about sorting out what are the critical issues, and then thinking in your mind, what do I think the answers are to these critical questions, and then go find the data to test those thoughts. It's the the old process of the scientific method. It's find the right, ask the right questions, hypothesize the answers, and test your hypotheses. And that's really kind of what I'm looking to do in the classroom when we have discussions. And case studies are great for that, because they obscure the answer, as if there was one answer. I mean, there are many that are reasonable answers, but they obscure that, and you have to, really dig in and apply the tools you're learning to see the picture in a way that's understandable, and it kind of starts to become clear, and then you act on the basis of that clarity. And it's it's almost never, the way they write these case studies is it's almost never the answer that it kind of appears to be from the case.
I see.
And that's true, honestly, in consulting and working with clients in a business situation as well. It's usually not the obvious answer.
When I was doing research and just kind of going through your LinkedIn, I noticed that not only you were the CEO of like Washington Bullets, also known as the Wizards, but you're able to solve the issue of chronic unprofitability, which was happening for 11 years. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's true.
With such a big issue for such a long time, when you were first handed that problem, what was your mechanism, or what was your framework into going into the solution?
Sure. Sports in general, basketball certainly, this is true. Sports in general, on the business side, is a marketing problem. It's a very high fixed cost business, because your player salaries are largely, they are what they are. And that's the biggest chunk of your cost structure. There aren't a lot of things that you can influence on the cost side to make a team more profitable. So you need to do it on the revenue side. That means marketing season tickets, marketing broadcast, marketing sponsorships, marketing single game tickets, group tickets, partial season tickets, all of that sort of thing. And that kind of marketing, it has some very standard approaches to how you do it well. I mean, the first thing you do is understand your customer base and what the segments are. Okay, and in the case of pro sports, and certainly in the case of the NBA, you have different segments that want very different things. You have, the white collar service businesses like law firms, accounting firms, consulting firms, architectural firms, and so forth, that want to buy tickets for the reason of impressing their clients. They want to have a place where they can bring their clients, and they're just going to have this over-the-top experience. So that's one kind of augmented product that you're selling. It's not just a seat; it's all the things that go with it: the parking and the clubs and the special service and all of that. And those kind of customers are just not price sensitive at all. It's a company expense, and they don't care what it costs as long as it is super impressive for their clients. That's one segment. At the other extreme, you've got families with kids.
Yeah.
Looking for something totally different, and have a totally different approach to pricing. They don't have a lot of money to spend, and they care a lot less about where they sit. They don't, want all the club lounge kind of things. They don't need the special parking or any of that. They just want to be in the arena, and they want to have something going on there that's going to keep their kids, attention throughout the whole time. So that means mascots and giveaways, and when the action stops on the court, you've got to have something else going on to hold their attention and just make this a great experience for parents and their kids. But again, they can't spend a lot of money doing that. Mm-hmm. So, but that's, and there are other kind of segments in between. And the key to the whole thing is understanding the buying behavior, the buying criteria, and the price sensitivity of each one of those segments. And then building a product that meets those needs at the price that they're that they're willing to spend, and it works. Honestly, it works. One of the things that I did when I first got there, in terms of pricing, was the best seats. We tripled the prices,
premium
pricing, and the worst seats, the nosebleeds, I cut them in half. So that they were more accessible to families with a bunch of kids.
So kind of like polarizing the prices all over the range.
Yeah, and but the point is, you're doing it to address the specific needs of each of those segments. So, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
It's interesting. Like, I think having your unique strategy applied to a business, it's kind of like a game of chess where you have to really calculate your moves and see what's going to be the end result. So I want to become good at strategy as well.
Good.
So I have a question. I have like a lot of debates and conversations with my friend regarding business, and most of them are like, oh, if you really want to just start a business and you want to like be successful, you just go ahead and do it. You don't need to take classes. You don't necessarily need to like go through a minor or like a major. And sometimes I disagree with them, but sometimes I see their point of needing to take an action. My counter argument, just taking this class, has been that, look, I learned about the value chain. I learned about core competencies, Michael Porter 5 different factors of how to assess an industry. So having this accumulated knowledge, for me now it's easier to step into a conversation with you, for example, and it kind of gain that experience that you've had before. Whereas if I was just to head in the business and start a company, maybe I'll learn these concepts eventually, but it will cost me much more effort and energy. And I kind of want to know what's your take on that?
I'm like fully in your camp on this one. I think it's it's absolutely silly to think that you could just go into this whole thing unprepared, not knowing how to do any of the kinds of things that you learn in strategy or in marketing or, operations or finance, and think that, I can just wing it and it's going to be great. Well, that worked for about 3 guys,
Yeah.
Steve Jobs and, Zuckerberg and those guys, who were, by the way, geniuses. But they're by far the exception to how this works. It just doesn't make sense to me that you would go into something that's as difficult to learn as business is, without getting all the help you can. It's like, if you want to be a pro golfer, well, you can start with nothing and just go out there and start hacking away and see how far you get. But doesn't it make sense to have somebody tell you which clubs to buy and what kind of balls to use, and show you the strategy of the game and what clubs you use when and how you swing and practice with you? And it's crazy to think that you could just pick up a club and you're going to be as good as somebody who's had all the advantages of lots of training.
I see. I think another analogy that I've heard is that you don't learn how to ride a bicycle in a seminar, and they try to use that. They try to use that as in, like, you don't learn business by just like attending classes, but rather by like actually doing it.
Yep.
And honestly, I think I understand the act of repetition as an act providing results and lessons, but I do think I can avoid them because I'm personally a lazy guy, and I'd much rather not suffer when I have to like start a company than like go through that major repetition, which is something like, I'm still like balancing and learning, but it's good to hear it from you as like a reassuring point.
Well, it's the bike riding analogy. Bike riding is really not that hard.
It's not.
Pretty much every 8-year-old can do it.
Yeah.
Okay, but learning how to do something that's complex is not as easy as just getting your balance on a bike.
Right. Totally.
Yeah, it's a completely different kind of learning. So yeah, good luck
if that's your like mental framework.
If you're going to start a business and just think, I can
wing it out.
Wing it.
Okay, so in terms of like business classes that one must take at Vanderbilt, do you have a few recommendations that you'd say are like the cornerstone of a good business understanding? Corporate strategy is definitely one of them, right?
I think so, but it depends to some extent on where you want to go, what you want to do.
Right.
There is definitely a track for people who want to go into more of the financial stuff. Then you would take classes like corporate finance or capital markets. There are classes for people who want to do marketing. And do like product management or advertising or any of the many kind of disciplines of marketing. There are classes for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I've taken one.
Yeah, that's a terrific class. There are classes for strategy. There are classes, and the one that I love to teach that I think is really useful for pretty much anybody is that silly class called business management, because it's intended to be an integrative kind of thing. It's really for juniors and seniors who've taken a lot of other business classes already and who want to learn how to integrate all of that, layer it with people management stuff, and have some of the kinds of experiences, reading certain books, investigating certain topics, that your employers are going to expect you to have experienced,
right?
When you come out of undergrad. So that course is designed as kind of a finishing school. So I think that's a great course for anybody. But otherwise, it's really more about what intrigues you, what feels good to you, what area do you want to go see. And that's really all you're going to get in our department is a couple of things. You're not going to come out of there with a degree in finance or a degree in marketing or whatever. And that's, I think, a great thing because Vanderbilt students, as smart as you all are, if you're going to go ahead in a business career, it's likely that you're going to go to business school. And so I think it's a waste to do all that, the 2 years of business focus in graduate business school, and then have a bunch of that being a repetition of what you did as an undergrad. I think you're way better off getting a business minor, taking some classes that interest you and give you some preparation. But then, instead of it being a major, going and taking more history and art and literature and music and the kinds of things that you're never going to be able to do again, probably.
I see, yeah.
Yeah, I think it really does make sense for you to try to come out of college with a well-roundedness as well as career preparation.
I think that's one of the things I realized kind of last year. Personally, even the class corporate strategy doesn't count for my major, minor, elective. It just says in the no credits, no usage of this class. But honestly, I think I've gotten much more from this class than some that are, major core of my degree.
Yeah.
And I'd say personally as a student, to those listening, freshmen, sophomores, or juniors, I'd say definitely try not necessarily blindly follow the, curriculum definitely use it because you need those classes, but try to kind of broaden your perspective and take classes that not necessarily fit in that. And as a final note, just to kind of conclude the conversation, what are your major next goals? What is it that you're looking forward in the future?
That's kind of funny. I'm well over 60 years old now. And a student asked me this past summer, the question that we always ask students, which is, what do you want to do in 10 years?
Yeah.
And the student asked me that question, and I had to stop and think about that. And I really came to the conclusion that I want to do exactly what I'm doing right now. This is a wonderful opportunity for me to pour myself and what I've learned over the course of decades into the next generation. And, and I love doing that. I love students, and I love, working with students and doing whatever I can to help them along the way. And, if I keep doing that the rest of my life, I'll be a very happy guy.
Wow. Thank you so much, Professor, not only for the conversation today, but for all of your hard work with all the students. I appreciate your time here today.
Thank you, Albie.
Thank
It's been
you.
a pleasure.